Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We are your hosts, Southborough Youth and Family Services. My name is Sarah Castle. I am the Director of Southborough Youth and Family. And with me this morning, we have Megan Island, who is our Assistant Director. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have Shannon Knyman, who is our Program Coordinator. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. And we're very excited to welcome Dr. Beril Bayrak, who is with us all the way from southern Turkey this morning, and actually on a boat in southern Turkey, which is, I think, the coolest guest location we've had this entire season. Good morning, Dr. Bayrak.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Very nice to be with you today.
Thank you. Dr. Bayrak is a certified pediatrician with over 20 years of experience in primary care, but she also specializes in parent-infant mental health and newborn behavioral observation. So she is with us to round out our series on psychosocial development across the lifespan. And today we're talking with her about our youngest of residents, 12 to 18-month-olds. So thanks for being here. Let's start with, actually, I don't know, we didn't check in. Does everyone have a morning beverage? I know, Dr. Bayrak, for you, it's 4 p.m. in the afternoon where you are. So we're all drinking our coffee because we're starting our day here in Massachusetts, but we'll toast to you anyway. I'm drinking water.
Yeah, we'll toast to you, right?
Thank you.
And no Turkish coffee for you. We had an episode a couple of weeks ago on sleep, and ironically, like, I don't know, 3 nights before or something, I had gone to an outdoor thing, and there was a Turkish graduate student there, and she said, "Let's make some coffee. I'll boil it on the stove." And I've had it before, but it was in the morning, and this was 9 p.m. And we said, "Oh, is that a good idea?" And she's like, yes, it's well, I don't remember what it's called, the stuff that's in it. But anyway, she said, it's not as caffeinated, so you'll be fine. And like 3 a.m. later, me doing my work for the day. So
Yeah.
so no
Yeah.
coffee.
Yes.
Cleaning her house in the middle of the night as a result, and
Right.
oh, that's funny. So how's everybody doing this morning? How's the weather there in Turkey, Beril?
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I have been. I just came here after 2 years.
That's great.
I have, my family lives here. I live in Massachusetts, but so yeah, it's things are okay right now. There was a rough patch, but better now.
That's good. How's the weather there? I've never been anywhere near Turkey, so is it? I see you're wearing a sleeveless shirt. Is it hot there this time of year?
It is hot. It's pretty warm.
Yeah.
It's it's like 80. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a warm weather.
Not too bad. Not too bad. Oh, that's great.
But windy, very windy where I am right now. So it's a warm weather with wind. Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's great. Well, we're expecting some storms here in Massachusetts today. It was very rainy here yesterday, and I think it's tapering off today, but it's looking a little overcast out there. But anyway, well, let's start talking about our topic for today. And I guess a good place to start is to remind people, sort of what our definition of psychosocial development is. There's different types of development that we could talk about. There's physical development across the lifespan. And when we're talking about psychosocial development, we're talking about the acquisition of social skills, social attitudes, and how we relate to other people, how we develop our social skills. And we've been talking about different stages, and it's interesting. Megan pointed out this morning that we've done a few different stages across the lifespan, and we're ending our series with our youngest of kids. So, so again, we're talking about 12 to 18-month-olds.
We're doing birth to 18-month-old.
Oh, it says birth to 12, birth to 12 to 18 months. My apologies. Thank you. I missed the birth piece. I was thinking those are old babies. Yeah.
Dr. Bayrak's like, I'm not ready for this conversation.
Experience.
So I'm going to say birth to 18-month-old then, rather than birth to 12 to 18 months old. So, Dr. Bayrak, maybe you could start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and about your background.
Yeah. So very nice to be here. I feel like I'm like somewhere having coffee with all of you. And yeah, so I'm a pediatrician. I'm originally from Turkey, but I've been working in the States, mostly in Massachusetts for 20 years. I worked in many different environments, mostly around the greater Boston area. But recently, like the last 5 years, I am more focused on parent-infant mental health. I did a fellowship in UMass Boston, and I'll probably tell the reasons why as a pediatrician what brought me here. But right now, so I do clinical, practice of infant mental health. I do teach, and I'm one of the newborn behavioral observation trainers in Boston Children's Hospital. And I'm a part of a nonprofit here in Turkey. I work with traumatized teen moms here, and postpartum depression. Those are like moms who go through postpartum depression, just helping them connecting with their babies. Yeah, I think as a pediatrician, I realize the importance, because we see so much issues like mental health issues, physical health issues that are very preventable. And the first few years are so fundamental. And realizing that over the years really made me want to focus on prevention in a very broad, effective way. So that's how I found myself in infant mental health world.
Wow, that's great.
That's great. So actually, that's a nice segue into my question for you, which is, before the show had started, I was talking about, as I was starting to put feelers out for the show, I had talked to a couple of people and they were like, mental health and babies? Babies don't have mental health. What's that all about? But you're here to say that it's true. So what is mental health in infants?
Thank you for asking that, right? When we say infant mental health, the image might be a baby going to a therapist, like laying on the couch, right? But I sometimes I wish there was another definition, because it's really something very broad, what we're talking about. It is the well-being, it is the connected look at the physical, psychosocial, developmental well-being of of an infant, and as well as the well-being of the parent. So it is a unique field in that sense. And here, what we call infant is 0 to 5 years of age. But it is a unique field that combines the mental health, psychosocial, emotional, physical well-being, and it combines them all with other areas of development. And it's a preventative field as well in that sense. We're not necessarily dealing with somebody who has a problem or has an issue that we need to solve, but there's a very preventative focus to it. And it's also sectoral, different disciplines deal with infant mental health. That's one of the areas that I love about it. There's early interventionists, there's pediatricians, psychiatrists, psychologists, there are, social workers. There's so many different fields. And I think one of the most important things to say about infant mental health is like the promise that the baby has an internal experience, as an internal life. It just, everything centers around that. Like from birth, you have an internal experience. You have you're not just someone who absorbs things, but you're unique, like individual. You come with your unique individual experience. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you.
I like all that explanation. I think you really highlighted a lot of different things to explain what that concept of mental health can really mean for infants. So over the course of our different episodes, we've been talking about Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. And in this stage, what Erikson highlights is trust versus mistrust as an important part of a baby's psychosocial development. What does that mean? And so what do we see for babies and infants during this stage?
Right. Yeah. So that's a very broad question, which, yeah, I think as a species, this is like the psychosocial development. I see that as our superpower, right? Like all different species have their own power, but the ability to trust, the ability to connect, to bond is really our superpower. And so when we think of like trust versus mistrust, we think of attachments that form the attachment relationships, but it is actually very, very granular. So it's really not black and white, so it really is made up of moments, like from birth till 18 months, like moments of like connection, moments of disconnection. Of course, nothing is perfect, but over time, babies are born, like babies have an experience even before they're born. Now we know that, like in the uterus, they have an experience. They're hearing, they're making some type of memories, right? They remember, they register the voice of their parents. So they come already having an experience and already knowing their parents. And little by little, but in the beginning, still their relationship to others is more indiscriminate. But over time, they have a rhythm. They develop a dance with their parents. And by the time, the first 2 months, it's more indiscriminate, but they learn with the interactions, they learn to regulate their own body. And then by the time their life gets more complex, their interior world gets more complex, and the rhythm, the relationship gets more complex. By the time they're 6 to 9 months old, they have an image of their parents, and they start to have that like really special relationship, like the special bond with their parents. And that's the time when they will cry when the parent leaves. They will, be very weary of strangers. And over time, that relationship, will get more and more complex as they grow. And at some point, they learn to have, that relationship. They learn to have this internal picture of their parents. So they will know that when the parent leaves, they're not actually leaving. So it's through those relationships, through those parent or caregiver child relationships, they get to have a view of the world. So trust and mistrust is very central to that. Like if trusting here means really a safe anchor, like I can anchor myself, like I have a safe anchor. And if they have that safe anchor, then they can go around and discover the world. And they can go around and, form different relationships. And it affects every other area of their world as well. And again, I can't emphasize it enough, but it is not black or white. It's not perfect, right? Like we're not talking about perfection at all. We're talking about disruptions. We're talking about like a path that is not very linear. But once that safe anchor is there, it's just, like they can save that precious energy to all the other areas of their development.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you were first talking about the development at this stage, you were talking about how it also, when we're talking about infant mental health, we're also talking about the well-being of the caregiver or parent as well. And since it's about, infants come into the world being completely dependent on whoever's taking care of them. And so it would make a lot of sense then that the well-being of that parent or caregiver has a huge impact on that development for the baby.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, yeah. So that's one thing that's very unique about infant mental health. It really has embodies the parents' well-being. Yeah, that's so important. Thank you for bringing that up. That's
yeah. Well, the other thing, I was smiling to myself when you were talking about a baby developing an anchor and then being able to then explore the environment around them safely and more confidently. And that made me smile because I was thinking about my own children and the challenges that many parents face with babies, feeling kind of exasperated because like you just folded that entire basket of laundry and there they go, they're taking everything out and or they're safely sort of exploring their environment, and that it can be a really frustrating or exhausting period for parents, but it kind of reminds me, or it's a nice image to think about when asking this next question. But at different stages, we've found that we've been kind of discussing with our guests that some of the challenges that parents and families face in supporting their family members, so in this case, babies, that it might actually be a function of positive psychosocial development. So I guess what I mean to say is that when babies are experiencing, maybe you have a child who's experiencing a lot of fear of strangers, for example, it might be kind of an exasperating experience for a parent, but it actually could be a sign of positive psychosocial development. So maybe you could just talk a little bit more about that. What are some of the things that parents might worry about or be frustrated with, but that are actually positive? Sorry, that was a really long.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's just so much of that. It's just, it's it is definitely challenging, and there's so many things, but before going into like all the things we reassure parents about, I want to also say that it is our job as professionals to really hear parents' worries. That's very important. I mean, it's not, the worries are very important, even if it's something, that is normal development, there's just so much to it. I mean, it might be sometimes that they're not so familiar with psychosocial normal development, but sometimes there's more to that. There's something more that they bring from their past, or so it's just very important. But there's a lot of those times when psychosocial development kind of takes the baby to a different, they actually change a lot, and sometimes it's very hard for parents to make sense of things. One thing to say about that, like, is the touch points. So there are some touch points throughout infant's development, the early 0 to 18 months, and everything, there touch points, we think those are like a biobehavioral shift. So brain changes really rapidly, things change. And those are times when the baby, like, sometimes sleep is disrupted, feeding is disrupted, everything's disrupted with no reason, right? And the parents rightfully worry, they think there's something wrong. But typically it is just a period of very rapid growth, very rapid brain growth. And so those are, that happens at 2 months, it happens at 6 months, especially before a major milestone, like, for instance, before they start like crawling, before they start standing, everything kind of gets disrupted a little bit. Then
Mhm.
one thing we get a lot of questions about, as you mentioned, is the separation anxiety phase at 6 to 9 months. Every baby is different. Every baby is very
Mhm.
different. But all of a sudden, they just start crying, when the parents leave. It's just hard to leave them with strangers, and all of a sudden, and sometimes some parents really worry about this a lot, like, what's wrong with my baby, doesn't she like people, doesn't she?
Mhm.
But this is actually a stage of healthy attachment. The babies who develop secure attachments can go through this phase. It doesn't mean, if they don't go through this phase, it does not mean they don't have a secure attachment, but it is a very, very, very normal expected phase. Yeah.
I'm shaking my head. My younger child, who's now 5, he was known far and wide everywhere as being, he was referred to as a barnacle, because my husband couldn't hold him, nobody could touch him except me. And so it just feels good to know. I just remember being so tired during that stage of saying, can somebody please, I would literally hide behind furniture. I'd be at a family get together and I'd be like eating my dinner behind a dresser or something like that, because that was the only way I could, so it's just, I guess, reassuring. I'm not in that stage anymore. Thankfully, he's much more outgoing, but it's hard to believe when you're in that this is okay, and that this is healthy development. And so it's nice to hear that.
Right. And it
And now
seems
you're on the
like,
other side.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
now
you
we're
can
on the
say,
other
like,
side. Yeah.
and you just said it, he's outgoing now.
Yep.
And
right,
Yep.
it really ends.
It does.
Right.
So now he has a picture of mom in his mind. So mom is
Right.
there, so he doesn't have to cry.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So speaking of this, this past year and a half now has been so hard on everybody, and including babies. So one of the stories that we hear is, finally families feel safe to get together, or friends feel safe to get together, especially now everybody's gotten vaccinated. And so they're super excited to show off their baby to everyone. And so they they hand off the baby to grandma or grandpa or the friend or the aunt, and they're picturing, like this is going to be this loving bond that happens, and babies are freaking out, and it's making people feel worried. It's making them feel sad. Do you have anything to say to those parents that, that feel like, my kid is just he's a, I don't know, connection. He's a failure at connection. He's, he's going to be the barnacle baby forever. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, it's, just so many questions about it, and so many people, I think we all had like a stunted psychosocial development these days. We all had like difficult, because socialization is such an important part of our lives, including, and babies have this, like, typically babies have this normal way of developing into it, right? Like they are with their, of course, the caregivers are of primary importance, but they regularly interact with other children, other adults. They go to playgrounds, they do this and that. So what happens is, even though the primary caregiver is like the safe, like the anchor, but they have this, they develop this, they kind of, learn that, interacting with others, like they kind of learn that others are safe too, right? And by time they learn, others can be interesting as well, right? So none of that happened with COVID. They were stuck, most of the babies were stuck at home, and they were also, like, I think one important thing is they were most probably they were stuck with stressed adults and stressed children, because babies do pick up when people around them are stressed out or they have anxiety, so they're home. So it's really been challenging. I think they did not get that stimulation. They did not get those kind of like, like getting used to. So I think, one thing probably shouldn't be done right away is just going from zero stimulation to like overwhelming amount of like everybody together kind of. I think there should be a way to get them like step by step, you know, like having them, I mean, it all comes down to baby feeling safe. And I think it's a lot of times I find that, you know, just little by little, because we just need to remember that these babies missed out on things for such a long time. And in addition to psychosocial, they also missed out on like having, you know, going to the park and climbing, a lot of all those skills that go together, right? The sensory that goes together. So I think it's really important to think of maybe for parents, like, you know, if I would recommend some, just step by, like have a plan about it, like step by step, you know, like let's just do a little bit of socialization, a little bit more, and then, you know, take them to a party.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not go
If possible, I don't know.
From zero to,
yeah.
hey, let's go to a big rock concert or something.
Right.
Not that you're taking your kids to a rock concert, but that might be a little too big of a leap.
Yeah.
But it's not that, you know, it's kind of, it might be a very accurate analogy when you put yourself in the viewpoint of a baby, right? Like that stimulation, that overwhelm might be like a rock concert all of a sudden from nothing, you know, like so, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me where I was, but I was out somewhere in public, and somebody I knew had their young baby who was born just in March of 2020, so just as things were getting started, and it was like at the grocery store or something like that, and this child's eyes were just so big, and it was he was taking in so much information, and you know, and of course, you know, people are drawn to babies all over the place, so people are saying hello, and it's like, whoa, he wasn't upset or anything. It was clear that he had a lot of, you know, he was taking in a lot all at once. So,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And people miss babies too, right? Like because people get like this regulation, and you know, like it's just such a different type of But I think it's a good idea to give them a little space, you know, even when
Sure.
Right.
But or I don't know, or if they're, you know, it's or just to expect that, you know, if they have to go to a you know, it's going to get back to normal, but I think it will take time for everyone. It will really take time for the psychosocial development to go on the regular, you know, path.
Right.
Talk a little bit about what are some typical behaviors that parents might worry about that are actually things to be expected for this phase of development. But are there any things that you would consider to be red flags that parents really should be concerned about and might want to seek some help around and talk to a pediatrician about?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, when we talk about, you know, I think you have addressed different areas of development here: speech, motor, fine motor, all the areas. When we think of like early psychosocial development, one of the first things we think of is the reciprocity. Is the reciprocity, is the eye contact. For instance, eye contact is something that starts really, really early. When they get enough stimulation, babies very early on start to be able to engage with their parents, and they communicate. You know, there's a two-way communication. The communication is not, of course, it's not like sentences,
morning,
but
Mom.
it's not always words. But it's sometimes it's their body. Sometimes it, you know, it's there's just communication going on, two-way communication. And then it's 6 to 9 months of age, babies develop this wonderful skill of joint attention. That's also something that we really look for. So that is the ability to focus on the same thing, right? It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be eye to eye. You can be at different, you know, but you are focusing on the same thing. Right, the same toy. So the baby is looking at the same toy that the parent is looking. The babies, you know, can kind of, even the gaze, you know, sometimes we do look at infants and parents with video, but just like the gaze kind of coordinated gaze. So when those things don't happen, when reciprocity doesn't happen, eye contact, you know, that that might be a concern. When the mutual, like the joint attention doesn't happen at 6 to 9 months, every baby is different though, but when that doesn't happen, like baby, that is a concern. When the parent doesn't feel connected to their baby, that's definitely a concern. Or the baby doesn't show any special attachment to the parent at all, that's a concern. And of course we look at the way the baby communicates, the way like it's all like we look at development and the baby as a whole person, right? We look at everything together. And one thing about it to say, like of course we worry about with delayed communication, we worry about issues, problems, but there's also, like for instance, too much screens early on. They sometimes really derail the regular like communication, the two-way communication. Some COVID, we will see that later, but I wonder, like everybody being masked, like regular contact, how much that derailed. So it doesn't mean that there's definitely something wrong, but I think, these are things to watch. And especially I think when the parent feels that there is something, there's something wrong with my baby. Like if you have that intuition as a parent, it's very important. And I think sometimes parents feel that way, but they want to wait, does the secret grow out of it, or they don't want to like bring it up. And I think it's very important to bring it up early on if you feel that something is not right with the communication, with the bonding, or with the way you see your baby. How, of course, the other things that are very connected is how the baby pays attention to the outer world, and how makes sense of their senses, how they respond to different senses, that's all connected. So if there's any concern with any of that, I think, we wanna look at the whole picture.
That's great. Well, I would like to just conclude, and you very nicely highlighted that throughout our talk today, just that as providers in the field, your job is to be available and hear parents' concerns. And so I am sure you will sort of join me in saying that, if you had any concerns as a parent about your child's development, that your pediatrician would surely welcome you to reach out to them and talk. And you also mentioned that the earlier you do that, the better. And it would be great to conclude, nope, things look great, just keep going, doing what you're doing. But that, if you have any concerns or questions about your child's development and your development, the bonding relationship with your child, that you should certainly, always feel comfortable to talk to your child's doctor. And, I love that you do work in postpartum support for women, Dr. Bayrak, because I'm sure, as we've said earlier today, that the well-being of the parent really matters in your child's psychosocial development too. And so if you're a new mom and you're looking for support for yourself, it's a very challenging time to become either a brand new mother or, having a second child for sure, or third or fourth can be really challenging also. So make sure you're taking care of yourself also, and getting support if you need it. And we had Thom Early Intervention Services here at one point. Early intervention is a really great resource for parents as well. And I recall them mentioning that, feel free to call if you have questions, and whether you think, your child might need some extra support. Do you have any other parting words, Dr. Bayrak, about resources for parents, or any other parting words of encouragement?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love talking about this because it's very important. And I think overall as a society, we talk more about learning and, other areas of development more than psychosocial. So I think, it's very complex. And I think parents really need to be heard. As you said, that's one of the most important things about, infant mental health and psychosocial development. I think it's very important for a parent to be able to voice their concerns and to be heard. And when we talk about these like red flags, I would really like parents not to think about any of them as labels or like, something that is wrong. But the earlier we work on strengths and we can we can kind of help any type of vulnerabilities within the family, the better the outcomes. And sometimes it's just, like reassurance. And sometimes, so I would really love, if just one thing, please, like the parents' concerns are they're very valuable. And there's no such thing as labeling a baby, but it's great to intervene early, to talk to your pediatrician, to talk to your early intervention. I think there's a lot of resources in Massachusetts, right? Early intervention is one. Your pediatrician, there's Healthy Families for young parents. There's a lot of other services for young parents. There's a lot of like, if somebody wants to read anything online, I would recommend like Healthy Families through American Academy of Pediatrics. There is Massachusetts Association of Infant Mental Health. There's a lot of resources through it. I don't know. We can share resources, but I mean, in Massachusetts, there's a lot of resources.
That's great. Well, Dr. Bayrak, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it. You're I feel confident that the families that have worked with you and the moms that you support are really benefiting from your work, and it's been a very interesting conversation, and thank you for joining us all the way from Turkey. It's wonderful.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Oh, good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, so next week, we are actually, we've been doing Coffee Talk for a little over a year at this point. And so we are deciding that we're going to take a break for the summer. We don't know what the future holds for Coffee Talk. So we're both sad and, but excited also to join you next week for our season finale of Coffee Talk. We're doing a special date. Instead of Tuesday at 10, we're going to be doing our season finale on Monday, June 21st, also at 10, right? Is that right, ladies?
Yes.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about the best of Coffee Talk and sort of highlighting some things that we've talked about throughout the year that we want to impart upon people as they head into the summer months. So we'll hope to see you there. That's next Monday, the 21st at 10. And again, Dr. Bayrak, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you then.
Thank you.